So you've got 60 grand to spend on a new medium SUV, but you've got no idea where to start. It's understandable. Today you're in luck because we're going behind the scenes with the Car Advice team on our medium SUV mega test. We're going to figure out which one of these is worthy of your cash. Over the next few days, the judges are going to be busy poring over every detail of these cars. But before they get started, let's see what their initial impressions are. Before you look at prices and deep dive in the specs, which of these feels the most premium to look at?
Because it's so tailored and sort of almost minimalist in a way, is the Kodiaq.
Definitely the Tiguan Allspace. Yeah, it's sort of less is more with that design, and I quite like it.
I suppose from a branding angle, you've got the Euros. We have this thing in Australia about European prestige, so Volkswagen and to a lesser degree the Skoda and the Peugeot. But it doesn't take long inside the Hyundai to realise that sometimes perception and reality aren't quite the same thing, because the Hyundai feels really nice.
So the CX-8 is a bit of a bastard child between the CX-5 and the CX-9. Do you reckon it actually looks any good?
It does. It's a bit of a frumpy looking thing. It doesn't have Mazda's normal design nous about it. Its proportions are a bit strange. It's a bit narrow. It's sort of a bit tall. But I guess we have to sort of grade a car's substance underneath the skin. So if this was a test about design, the Mazda would probably be stone motherless last, but I get the feeling it's not going to be. So there's more to it.
It definitely does look a bit strange. It's kind of like stretched, pummeled and forced into shape rather than being as cohesive as Mazda's other SUVs.
I've always thought it looks a little bit weird. It looks really narrow from the front, but you look from the side and it's extremely long, and it appears like a high roofline as well. It's a bit of a strange looking car.
So over 10 years ago, Hyundai was making stuff like the XL. Do you reckon if you asked someone back then that they would be willing to pay $60,000 for a Hyundai SUV, they'd be up for that?
No, in short. But the funny thing is, the previous one was close to that price too, and that was the most popular variant in the range, the Highlander.
I feel like Hyundai's done a complete turnaround compared to the XL, which was fine, but not exactly renowned for its, opulence. This new Santa Fe is a world apart from that.
My first boyfriend had an XL, and there is no way back then I was thinking they were going to make cars like this.
In this test, a full-size spare tyre is going to be an important element.
Look, I wouldn't say it's vital, but considering these are cars that are meant to cart families, go out of town, it's something that should be there.
Especially with a large SUV, I think it definitely has to be in there. But if it's a small SUV, maybe not so much.
If you're travelling with your family, you want to be in business class, which has the best interior on first glance?
Really hard to decide, the Santa Fe or the CX-8. I quite like the quilted seats in the Santa Fe though.
I think it's a bit of a close fight between the Santa Fe, which is proper kind of family-sized accommodation, and the CX-8, which is really nice inside.
Actually, you know what? It's kind of, I probably should have given a call out to the Mazda earlier, because it does have a sort of sumptuous feel. There's leather touch points everywhere, and it's got this beautiful sort of craftsmanship about it, which Mazda always goes for.
Is 3 years warranty long enough for a family SUV?
No, it's not, and we've gone pretty hard on that. There's only a handful of brands still with 3-year warranties. Mazda's recently joined the 5-year camp. So Volkswagen on this test with its 3-year warranty is looking a bit stingy.
3 years is really at the tail end of that, and it doesn't do a lot for buyer confidence, I don't think.
Not anymore, no. I think there's some manufacturers who need to start stepping up to 5 or more, like a lot of others are.
We're about to go for a spin with the judges to see how these cars drive, but before we do that, we want to have a look at cargo capacity, because that's important in an SUV. We've ordered them here from smallest through to largest. There is a little bit of a catch there, but we'll explain that shortly. Now, before we go have a chat to our judges, I'm sure you're dying to know which one opens the fastest.
Well, Hyundai claims the smallest literage here in its cargo area, but that doesn't mean it's actually the least practical. There are different measurement standards used by different brands, so it can be a bit misleading. And in terms of length and height and depth, it's actually not the smallest here. It's a nice square loading area, really flat. The third row seats go right into the floor,
Underneath here, there is a retractable cargo blind and a place to stow it away, which is really good. You've got rear air vents, you've got temperature adjust in the rear as well, and perhaps the coolest feature, which isn't that uncommon on many cars today, are buttons that flip the second row seats down. It also, I should add, has the quickest electric tailgate on test. So not every car here has a full-size spare wheel, but the Santa Fe does. The downside is it's right underneath the car, under the body here, so it can be a bit dirty and hard to get to at times. There are some cars on the market where it's under the loading floor, but it's better to have one than not. Smallish adults, I would say, is what the third row is designed for. Clearly the entry isn't as easy as something like maybe a Kluger or a proper people mover. If you're going to be carrying 3 adults, none of these are really going to be your ideal choice. But in terms of third row space, this is definitely one of the better cars on test.
The CX-8 isn't too bad. Underneath, you've got a bit of storage, none of the cargo blind though, so you can put maybe things that roll around underneath there so they won't go too far. A couple of fold-out grocery bag hooks on both sides. You can fold down these third row seats by the back as well, which is quite handy, and they're nice and light too, so maybe you saw that just folded down as well. So pretty much folds really flat.
Okay.
It's not too bad. CX-8 has a space saver, Paul, so it's under a couple of levels here, so underneath this storage area, and under here of course with the toolkit as well. No, there's not too much in the CX-8 unfortunately. There's a couple of cup holders, deep storage bins, which is really good, no air vents, no speakers, no reading lights. But I've got to say the seat comfort is incredible. Even for an adult, you could easily sit in this for half an hour or so it's pretty impressive.
So third row is definitely for adults, not just kids?
Yeah, adults. So I sat and I'm like, this doesn't feel like third row seat comfort. So it was quite surprising and step above the rest of them in terms of comfort.
So the Tiguan is middle of the pack in terms of its practicality as well. It kind of has a few extra bits and pieces that stop it just being a big empty box, but it doesn't go all the way. So a little bit like the Kodiaq, the Tiguan borrows a couple of features. It's got the levers to drop the rear seats from the boot. It's got the cool little removable torch. It's got a single bag hook, plus it's got underfloor storage for the cargo blind when it's not in use.
Third row, kids only or adults as well?
Kids, and preferably younger ones, because mid-teens and taller are going to struggle to squeeze in. It's not too bad in terms of headroom, but getting your knees and your feet in behind that second row are a lot harder. There isn't a full-size spare in this one, so what you need to do is drop that cover out of the way, cargo blind out of the way, and you'll find the space saver spare underneath.
The Skoda does have a lot of clever features in the rear that sort of lives up to its brand catchphrase of simply clever. I hate to sound like a marketing type, but it's actually true. So you've got little torches here that hide away for emergencies, levers here to flip the back row seats. There's even little blankets that fold up and hang on the back of the seat, which is actually pretty cool. 12-volt outlet, tons of hooks to hang your various things from, a little first aid kit hidden away in here, and of course the staple umbrellas in the doors as well. So in terms of clever features, the Skoda makes up for its slightly smaller boot. Look, the third row is not great. For kids, it's going to be fine, and often these cars are billed as being 5-seaters with 2 for emergencies, and that's sort of what the Skoda really is. Adults, maybe over 170 centimetres in particular, are going to really struggle. The spare tyre is a space saver or temporary spare wheel, which means it's got a limited range and you can only do a limited speed on it. It's hidden underneath the floor, so you take this part out. This is your cargo blind, so it's cool that you can put this under the floor, but you have to then take this out, and then underneath that is your temporary speed limited spare wheel. So you don't really need to change your tyre very often, but if you do, it's a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, so Peugeot measured boot size a little bit differently to the other SUVs here. Most of them measure up to the window, whereas Peugeot just go a little bit further. We got in the back of this and I was sitting on an angle for my legs to fit. It's absolutely tiny, and your legs are sort of sitting lengthwise as well, and there's not much toe room, so definitely kids. So you've got to fold this thing all the way out, which is sort of good to protect this part, but it's not really the point of it. And you've got to access this red lever here to make it fold down, which looks sort of okay, but for someone who not really too sure how it works, it can be pretty messy. Then you've got to fold all this back up. I don't know, it's a bit naff. No, the Peugeot doesn't have a spare wheel at all or a space saver. It's got a repair kit, although I have no idea where it is. But if you don't know where it is either, you can take that optional scooter to the servo. That'd be probably the best way around it.
So the Sorento does all right. It doesn't have a lot of space behind the third row, but once you've got the third row dropped down to the second row, there's a lot of length and a lot of width, which makes it a fairly usable space. So if you're lucky enough to be seated in the third row, you'll find face level vents in the side of the boot, plus your own booster fan to keep yourself comfortable. There is, under the cargo floor, room for the cargo blind, but unfortunately, it's like a 3-piece cover to get it up. There is a full-size spare in the Sorento. However, unlike other cars where you've got to unpack the boot, this one you can leave everything in, but it does mean you're going to have to crawl around underneath, drop the spare out and access it that way. Third row, now it looks pretty big and you would think this one could do adults, but I'm not the tallest adult here and I find myself up against the headlining in this one. There is just enough room for like knees and legs, but you're sitting really low in the floor as well, so it's a real knees up stance when you're in the third row.
So we're in the Skoda Kodiaq here. Funny name, great car though. I do love some of the cool features like the things that pop out of the door to stop it from opening into things. What do you think about the ride?
Look, it's not bad. It's on pretty big alloy wheels, and the trade-off of that design aspect, I suppose, is there's always a bit of terseness and fidgetiness to the ride, but it's actually not pretty bad. It's relatively quiet. It's not the quietest car here and it's not the smoothest, but it's also still pretty damn good.
I've got to say, from the back here, I have stacks of leg room and tow room. Headroom is really good as well, but I am finding, like you said there, the ride, it's quite firm and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable in the back here. Like it's really sort of quite jarring. So
it's sort of that European thing, right? They really prioritise handling as opposed to ride comfort.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about the engine? What's the acceleration like?
It's not bad. It's actually the equal lowest torque output engine here, but it's still got 400 Newton meters, which in layman's terms is a lot. It's still going to tow 2 tonnes. It's got plenty of oomph. I was averaging fewer than 7 litres every 100 kilometres of fuel use on a representative loop yesterday. And they're all sort of like that. The DSG, once you're up and running, is pretty smooth. Obviously, occasionally they can have some slight hesitancy around town. But look, the thing that you're really amazed about with these new diesels is just how quiet and refined they are. And this is a perfect example. It's one of the more refined engines here.
And what are your thoughts on the stop-start system? I know that a lot of these Volkswagen products can be a little sketchy when you try and get back onto the throttle quickly. Is this one any good?
It's not the best. I actually really like the Mazda's stop-start system, funnily enough. There is a slight sort of, I guess, it's not bad. It doesn't like shutter the whole car, perhaps like earlier iterations did, but you certainly feel the car starting back up again. It is switchable though, so you can turn it off if you want.
Yep, and big bonuses here for heated seats in the back and a nice centre armrest as well, but no USB charging, just a 12-volt outlet.
That's interesting. There's also no sunroof in this car, which is one of the few cars on test without that. And I think if you've got kids in the back in particular, it's quite nice to be able to sort of have a sunroof and see the night sky maybe.
What's your favourite thing about the car?
Look, it sounds really shallow and superficial, and I like a lot about this car, but it's probably the design. It's quite a unique vehicle and it has a really nice, well-proportioned, angular design language to it. Skoda has a sort of aggressiveness to its looks that its previous cars never did. And I think it's a pretty arresting-looking premium car, especially in Sportline guys with the big wheels. In the car park, it just looks great.
What do you think about the engine noise? Is it intrusive in the cabin here?
It's not too bad from the front. It might be a little bit worse in the back, but I spent a good hour sitting in the back the other day, Paul, and I did notice it was probably louder than the other cars.
Mandy, one thing that has blown me away with this car is the throttle and how it virtually doesn't do anything. What's the story with it? I mean, you sort of have to go full throttle for it to actually respond.
It's so weird. So you put your foot down and sort of nothing really happens, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa! I think it's going to take a long time to get used to somehow.
Yeah, it feels like it's more like the engine feels really willing once you give it the full throttle, but it's almost like a calibration thing where they want you to drive slower to get better fuel economy, and then the only time you're allowed to go quick is when you're just literally putting your foot through the firewall.
Yeah, which I think is, you're probably going to be doing that a lot of the time, so the fuel economy is not going to be great after all.
It is a bizarre setup. In terms of the room back here, look, it's not as roomy as some of the other cars, but I'm finding I have decent toe room, decent knee room as well, and we've got some creature comforts back here. I have a third zone of climate, there's a USB port, 12 volt outlet, but no heated seats. I've got these trays that I can sort of do work on and stuff.
Those trays are sort of good. I think, does that one fold down or fold up?
Folds up from the bottom.
Yeah, I think the Skoda had the opposite, and it kept hitting my knees, which isn't ideal. Obviously, it's probably suited to kids and, you know, playing games on laptops and stuff like that. Yeah. But yeah, like it could be handy for the business person, but they're probably going to be sitting in front. Yeah. So.
Now, I'm noticing around the cabin here, there's a whole bunch of random storage areas. It seems they've really thought about storage in this car.
It's really cool. I love these middle storage parts. It's making use of wasted space, really. And, you know, headroom is still relatively okay. I suppose there's no sunroof, but I would rather those than a sunroof. Yeah, look, you've got 2 cup holders down here. Although the storage underneath the console here where all the climate control are, it's not enclosed. Which I do like that, because you've got 2 USBs and an auxiliary and a 12 volt down there. When you're charging your phone, you'd want to hide that. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
This one misses out on sunshades in the back. Do you reckon they're vital for a car like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they were a bit gimmicky years ago. I think this is the only one missing them. Which, you know, come on, Volkswagen, it's just a simple thing. But it really helps, especially when you've got young kids in the back, and the last thing you want to be doing is, you know, if you're on a freeway pulling over and having to put you know, when you used to put those sheets on the windows? Yeah, but they're great for those.
What do you think of the ride in this car, Mandy?
Yeah, we're doing 100 Ks here, and it's really picking up all the small bumps and accentuating the bigger ones. So, yeah, not super fantastic.
Yeah, I'm finding in the back here it's not quite as firm as the Skoda, but it is still pretty bouncy and really not that comfortable at all.
Yeah.
What do you think about the gearbox? Does this dual clutch gearbox live up to its name?
Look, there's probably better transmissions in the group. Look, for your average punter, I don't think they're going to really notice it. We probably notice it a bit, but you know, for just everyday driving, I don't think it's going to be too much.
Yep. And what's your favourite feature of the car?
Virtual cockpit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was very adamant.
I love it. It's so crisp, it's so clear, and I think it's sort of a design that won't really date all that quickly. And it's easy to, you know, navigate through with the, you know, the steering wheel controls. It's probably one of my favourites. I do. Obviously, we know I love Volkswagens, but I really do like how they put an interior together. I know it's, you know, it can be bland, but it just feels so sturdy. Like it's going to last forever, really.
Yep. Or at least for 3 years, which is the warranty. Kia Sorento Kez, what's the ride like?
The Sorento ride is generally pretty good, but it's that little bit kind of harsh on initial impact.
What does that mean?
So you'll go through like bumps and dips and that's fine, but you know how there's a lot of kind of rough-edged, sharp potholes and stuff on Australian roads? This is the thing that trips it up the most, I think. It can't kind of ease off the edges of those bumps.
Yep. I'm finding in the back here that the seats are a little bit firm, and it's not quite as smooth as the rest of the cars. Like you said, it is a little sharper, but not quite as bad as the Germans, which is good news, I guess, given Kia does a lot of local ride and handling tuning. In terms of legroom, I haven't got a great deal of toe room. Even knee room doesn't feel quite as accommodating, and you have your seat quite far forward.
I'd be concerned by that because I'm fairly short, and I'm short-legged as well, so I sit a lot closer than most people do.
But in terms of creature comforts, we have a USB charging port in the back, 12 volts, heated seats for the outboard, this awesome panoramic glass roof that doubles as a sunroof as well, and I have stacks of headroom, there's no dramas there. Plus, the same as the Santa Fe, you can move that seat backwards and forwards, which is kind of cool. Let me know what you think of the engine.
The engine I like in terms of it's strong and it's robust. It's got good pickup from standstill. So it's not like you're waiting for torque to come on tap or for turbos to spool up or anything like that. It's pretty much get up and go. But it's not super quiet or super refined. I think it's not the newest engine in the world. It's a couple of years old in terms of its development, or it's an entire generation old in terms of development. And it's, you feel it at idle and you hear it even at light throttle as a really kind of distinctly diesel pitch to it.
Given this is so closely related to the Santa Fe, the interiors look very different. Which one do you think has the better interior?
I feel like in terms of interior, everything from design to finish to materials, the Santa Fe is upmarket. Like, it's modern and it's even, I guess it's not afraid to be a bit adventurous. There's cool ripple panels on the doors. There's looks like a tweed headlining almost. This is fake stitching in a plastic dash and just elements that aren't as modern or fresh. The two don't look related at all.
What do you think of the gearbox and the punchiness of the engine?
The punchiness of the engine, I have no problem with whatsoever. I think it's exactly where it needs to be. It's not traffic light Grand Prix winning stuff, but it is pretty good. The transmission as well does exactly what a transmission in a car like this should do. It's unobtrusive. You don't really notice it's there. It's probably not as alert as, say, the Volkswagen or the Skoda. They'll kick down really quickly and sometimes quite aggressively. This car is maybe a little bit more relaxed, but for the most part, you just don't know that auto is there, and I think that's right for a car like this.
What's your favourite thing about the Sorento?
My favourite thing about the Sorento, I think, is, I know this is going to sound a little bit odd, but it feels big. And not just in terms of the space you've got, but the actual physical car that you've got. It's sort of commanding, and I know there's not a lot of difference from even the smallest to the largest in this group, but it just has if road presence is your thing, this car has it.
Rear sunblinds, Kez, should all SUVs have them?
So as a kid, they were the thing that would have made every road trip that I had to endure so much more bearable. So I feel like every SUV, family cars definitely should have them.
These are some pretty harsh country roads, Ron. What's the road noise like in the cabin?
Look, road noise is, I'd say, decent. I feel like with you behind me, you're not as close as you actually are. There's that layer of kind of white noise of that rough tarmac filtering through. So it's not great. It's definitely not terrible, but there's some improvement to be made.
Hyundai prides itself on local ride and handling tuning. Can you actually notice it when you're behind the wheel?
You can. There's a little bit of tyre roar that I'm getting, but that's sort of a side effect of having low profile tyres, but the actual ride quality is really good. Some of the Euro cars we've driven over this relatively typical Aussie B road, full of corrugations and patches and things like that. This car is a lot smoother over them. It sort of irons or rounds them out just a little better. You feel them, but you don't feel them anywhere near as much. And the body control's still good. It's not wallowing about or pogoing like a traditional body-on-frame SUV might. So a really good compromise.
I feel in the back here a lot more comfortable than I have in some of the other ones, especially that Skoda. I have stacks of knee and leg room. Not as much toe room as I would have liked, but I love this material they've used on the roof, the diamond quilt stitching on the seats. This feels really premium.
It does. Hyundai's gone to a great effort to really sort of, sex this interior up. This is the flagship version and it shows. And the Kia Sorento, which is a similar car, the material quality is sort of 5% inferior to this car. And like you said, just the design of it, the feel of it, the tactility of it, it's very European in a lot of ways.
Yeah. In terms of creature comforts in the back here, I've got centre armrest. I have 2 USB ports, which is great. Seat heating for the outboard seats, but a very cool feature, I can move the passenger seat forwards and backwards to give me more room. So that is potentially a feature that kids are going to annoy the crap out of the front passenger.
I think it's made for some countries where chauffeuring in the back seat is the popular thing, but in Australia it's probably called kid annoyance mode.
Yep. What do you reckon about the trend of these retractable blinds in the back?
I like them. I mean, what's the harm? There's no negative to them, and there's only positives. It's if you don't like them, just keep them down. And we've all been in a situation where we've had the sun hammering us on the side of the head, so I think it's great.
This car uses a bit more fuel than some of the competitors in this segment. Is it to its benefit behind the wheel? Like if you give it a punch, is it actually good?
Look, it's a pretty, as you can feel now, I'm under throttle. It's a pretty potent engine. It's an older engine, this one. It's obviously had some tweaks over the years, but it's been around a while, the 2.2. A lot of power, a lot of torque. It's got a new 8-speed auto that really gets more out of it. And yeah, look, and we're talking about degrees here. It's still using sort of 7 to 7.5 litres every 100 Ks, which is still bloody good for a car that's, you know, this size. And it has a lot of punch. It's possibly after the Mazda, the punchiest feeling car here. And in terms of its refinement, it's really good. The one thing it's missing is stop-start, which I know that's a polarising feature, but there are times where that does really help the refinement. At idle, when you're still, there's no clatter coming through the cabin of a diesel car that's fitted with it, as opposed to this.
Despite the panoramic glass roof, which is a sunroof as well, I have stacks of headroom in the back here and lots of sort of shoulder room as well. This is a smaller car than the others, right?
And it's not the biggest or the smallest here, it's somewhere in the middle. There are some cars here, the Peugeot really springs to mind, where the sunroof really robs you of headroom. Whereas the design of this one and the inherent space of this cabin means you can get away with it. And it's such a great feature, right? It just airs the whole cabin out. It's beautiful.
Favourite thing about the car?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I think there are just the interior treatment that Hyundai has gone to. Like you said before, the beautiful quilted brown leather, that headlining is just something else. It's like an expensive pair of Versace pants. The Jaguar-style wraparound cowl atop the dash, the floating screen. I don't think I've sat in a car from Korea that has this level of, I guess, refinement, and that includes the Genesis product for that matter. So it's a real step up for Hyundai.
If you're going to be carrying kids in the back, what we all collectively love about this car is two very clever features. So first is a sonar, and we have seen cases overseas where parents have forgotten their kids in the car and tragically they've passed away. This sonar reminds you, and then if you don't get them out and it senses movement, the alarm goes off. So people will come to the attention of the car. And the second one is, if you're an overeager kid, and I did this when I was a kid, opened the door before Dad parked the car and he ran over my foot, the car will not let you get out if there's another car coming. So it has some really clever technology, and I think we need to see more of this in the SUV segment. Mike, this is the only car here also that has the technology that allows you to connect to this remotely using a mobile phone, which is kind of cool. You can lock and unlock it, start it remotely. So do you think that this technology should be coming to more SUVs in this segment?
I think an awareness thing, the awareness will grow. So right now it's a bit of a novelty. It's a bit of a sort of, gimmick to a lot of people. But I think in time it'll become, very, very, very popular, and you can certainly see the benefits of it. And kudos to Hyundai for kind of, I guess, leading the charge.
This CX-8, Mandy, the quietness inside the cabin, it's pretty impressive, isn't it?
It really is. Over the Europeans, it's quite astonishing actually.
So you guys quite liked the interior. There's some real wood in here, a lot of soft touch. I reckon it looks a bit bland and boring.
Really?
Which bits do you guys like about it?
Totally disagree with you. No, I love it. I know you can't see it through your screen, but feeling all this stuff, it's really super smooth. And I actually think I know it's not real wood.
No, it is.
It is?
Japanese wood, yeah.
Yeah, right. I sense some sarcasm in there, Paul.
No, I'm being 100% serious.
Really?
It's real Japanese wood, according to Mazda.
It doesn't sound like it. I think it goes really well with that brown, sort of black Napa leather, and the hood lining as well. It looks quite. I think it's black hood lining, so I know it's a bit dark, but I really like this interior.
All right, shows you don't have any style. In the back here, I have stacks of legroom and stacks of knee room as well, and then we've got some cool creature comforts. You've got heated seats on the outboard, you've got a third zone of climate control, we have window shades, which is great, and we also have stadium seating. I'm kind of sitting up higher and looking down, but what I can see from here is how tiny that infotainment system is. It almost looks like a joke infotainment system.
It's like something out of a Mazda 2 or a CX-3. It's for a top of the line premium car, I think you expect a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. What about the engine? Has it got enough punch?
Yeah, absolutely. That torque, it like takes you back in the seat. It really surprised me. Yeah, for a Mazda, I didn't think you could get that amount of power out of one.
And what about the ride? What are you thinking about the ride?
Yeah, it's not too bad actually. We're doing 100 k's now, and it's okay up the front here.
It feels beautiful in the back. I mean, it's soaking up these bumps really nicely.
And you can't quite, there's not much road noise either. So.
This road is really quite corrugated and rough, so this is a typical Aussie country road, and it's doing a really excellent job. What are your thoughts on the gearbox?
Not bad. Yeah, not bad at all. I think it's quite suited to, quite matched with the engine. Perfect match, I suppose.
And what is your favourite feature of this car?
Probably the engine. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. It could be the most powerful one out of all of them. But if when you want that extra bit of power, especially if you've got this loaded with 7 people, you need that a little bit of extra power, and it's quite fun to put the foot down every now and again. So yeah.
Kez, Peugeot 5008, and my head is rubbing up against the roof, and I cannot get my toes under your seat. Not a great start, is it?
It's not a great start. It's kind of like if you were an inner city dweller and you needed a 7-seat SUV but didn't physically have the space, this would be the one you'd go for. Otherwise, it's just that little bit tighter in every kind of dimension.
And the other thing I've noticed as well is that I'm having to yell at you because I can barely hear anything you're saying. Why is it so noisy inside this cabin?
There's a bit of diesel thrum. There's a lot of road noise. There's even bits of, I don't know if you can hear it from the back, but like the mirrors are creating wind noise that just isn't there in the other cars.
It's a great shame because this interior, I reckon it looks like the materials and stuff look amazing. Like the seats have this awesome stitching. You've got this material Alcantara-y type stuff on the doors. It feels like Peugeot's gone to a lot of effort with this interior.
It really does. So I know there's a lot of, TV renovation shows, and they always talk about luxe. You've got to up the luxe. Peugeot's done that. Like there's kind of felt, which you do not see in car interiors, in the doors and the dash. There's quilted seats. Everything about it is that sort of, that next level up.
Talking about creature comforts in the back here, we don't have seat heating, we don't have USB connectivity, there's just a 12-volt outlet. So it is a little lacking there in terms of extra features, but you do get this awesome looking panoramic roof which doubles as a sunroof. You get the window blinds as well, but there's no sort of centre armrest. Do you think there's enough versatility inside the cabin?
It's kind of a mixed bag because instead of the centre armrest and bits and pieces like that, you do get 3 individual backrests, and I can see some use in that. It means you can either offset seats to create a little bit more room, or access from either side, which is something that the 60-40 split middle row seats can't do, and I guess that's kind of handy in a way.
This is the only car here that's a front wheel drive. Does it make any difference to the drive experience?
In situations like this, it doesn't make a lick of difference. It's the same, easy to drive as the rest of the field. It's once you take it off the tarmac and go on to say at soccer practice, if you've got to park in a muddy, grassy kind of field, or country markets and things like that, then all of a sudden that lack of all-wheel drive becomes more noticeable.
So we spoke about the ride being quite noisy while we're driving along here, but what do you think of the actual ride quality itself?
French cars are synonymous with, good ride. This isn't one of them. It's so jittery and bouncy the whole way along. We're on a road that's, it's not a fantastic quality finish, but everything seems to be amplified. We're literally bumping our way along.
Engine and gearbox, let me know what you think of that package.
Engine and gearbox, I think something is lost in translation from English to French, perhaps, or French to English, perhaps. There's just not a lot of cohesion there. The engine is kind of slow to rev. It's not a powerhouse. The gearbox is slow, it's kind of caught napping. It's dozy. So all in all, it's really at the back of the pack in terms of how the powertrain functions.
What's your favourite feature of the car?
My favourite feature is probably the one that's going to divide opinion the most, and it's actually the iCockpit setup. So the small steering wheel, the high set gauges, pretty much everything is accessed through a touchscreen, although in iCockpit 2 there's now a row of buttons to shortcut to things. And I actually think as an interior interface, you've got a heap of display options, you've got easy access to everything. It really works quite well.
Well, that is unless you're a regular sized human like me and you can barely see the speedometer.
If you're abnormally proportioned like you, Paul, then that does create some problems. When you are a regular sized person, which I am, I'm literally well, not quite. The standard average adult male is 5'8". I'm 5'6". So I'm as close as you get to that, and it works really well for me.
It's okay to be wrong. You can throw a very small blanket over this field. Our judges were unanimous in their thoughts, and while there's nothing that stands out for the wrong reasons, it makes our task harder, but should leave buyers feeling more reassured. After a couple of days of testing, it's time to see how our 7-seat SUVs stacked up. The Peugeot 5008 looks chic outside and gorgeous inside and has a certain charm. But something has to finish last, and its moderately tighter cabin, lack of all-wheel drive and less polished road manners seal the deal. The Kia Sorento is absolutely excellent, perhaps the pick for family buyers after a big, spacious and sharp-looking option with an unbeatable warranty. It's just that the other Korean alternative edges it. The Volkswagen Tiguan Allspace is also shaded by its funkier platform mate, but it's a refined, classy offering with real brand equity and lots of clever touches nevertheless, and should please many family buyers. The Mazda CX-8 may look a little frumpy and its infotainment is below par, but its cabin quality and comfort feels a cut above, matching its premium pricing, and its twin turbo diesel engine is perhaps the best here. The Skoda Kodiaq makes a strong case for finishing second, and its clever, functional and yet high-tech interior, sharp design, good refinement and Euro cool mean its place on the podium feels assured. The Hyundai Santa Fe stands out as the best all-rounder though. Not only is it practical inside, well made, brimming with features and comfortable from behind the wheel, but there's also some real design nous and attention to detail that sets it apart from the Kia. Given it's newer, this is precisely what we'd have expected, and Hyundai hasn't let us down. So there you have it, the all-new Hyundai Santa Fe has taken out our mega medium-sized SUV comparison. To read the full review, head to caradvice.com. But in the interim, don't forget to subscribe and check out some of our other videos.